I actually
Sorry.
live, that's okay, in Hopkins, and there's 480 people up here. And so I understand rural Missouri. I'm born and bred a rural person. I'm originally from Arkansas, but with the a couple of stints in larger cities, I have always been rural. So I feel like I understand the plight of rural folks.
Well, you were born and raised in rural Missouri, so you know what it's about. You went to all your education in Missouri, so um, it's good. I mean, nobody knows it better than the people who have lived it and grown up in there. But what your main focus, based on most of what I have seen and read, you're great on all the progressive issues, but your main focus right now seems to be education. I guess because you've spent so much time there.
It is. I've always taught in rural schools. My daughter goes to a school where there are 16 kids in her entire fourth grade. And so the struggles out here are a little different than in other schools. But in general, we feel even harder than most people. So the defunding that's going on in Missouri schools right now, we're 49th in educational funding, we're 50th in starting teacher pay, 45th in teacher pay overall, are really felt out here. We lose teachers to border states. My own son crosses into Iowa every single day because he can make $10,000 more as a brand new teacher. So there was a superintendent a couple of weeks ago from Northwest Missouri who said something that really stuck with me. He said, Northwest Missouri schools are farm teams for bigger districts. And that's true. His school that he was talking about, the teacher with the most tenure there had been there for 5 years. And so we see massive turnover, which obviously impacts our students.
Right. It does. And I don't know how solid an education they're getting when there's such a turnover of teachers. And I'm from rural Missouri. I went to school in rural Missouri. My kids went to school that had about 100 children from kindergarten through eighth grade. So the small schools, we know what they're about, and they're scrounging pennies to give a good education. Well, so much of that has fallen onto the teachers.
Mhm.
And I have a sister and her husband are both teachers. So I watch them throughout their careers. And there's been a change in how the education system is being done. From when I went to school, everything just seems so cut and dried. Now you're almost like babysitters, and you're having to buy so much for your own classrooms. It's terrible. Plus, as you already stated, we're one of the worst paid states for our teachers in the nation. So
Yeah.
it's frustrating. It is. You're going to say,
I was going to say that I don't think people understand the low pay. There are schools in my district that start teachers at $31,000 a year. These are people that have, student loans that maybe $70,000 or $80,000 are trying to pay back. So when you pay for your student loan and you pay for your rent, you have absolutely nothing left to live on. Plus, like you said, they're expected to fund their own classrooms. To buy the things that their students need and that they need to do their jobs, which is why we see that turnover out here. And it's gotten um, schools in my district are now going to 4-day weeks. So kids aren't even going to be in school 5 days a week. And it's not because I know people say that's not such a bad thing, but here's the thing. And I always say, nobody goes to a 4-day week because they said, well, this is better for kids. People go to 4-day weeks to hang on to teachers because if you're going to pay them $31,000 a year, at least they have another couple days to do a side hustle to try to pay their bill. Awful thing.
right. Well, I was going to ask you, what is a typical day like? Because there's this misconception out there that teachers have a 9 to 5 job and they only work 9 months a year. They get a 3 month vacation, but that's not the real world. Because as I said, I watched my sister and her husband and how they went through it. So what is a typical day like for a teacher?
Well, it's like being on stage. It's like doing this, but you do it 6 times a day. You have to prepare to do this. And so all your preparation is done before your lesson. So that's stuff that's not paid for. And then all the grading. I was an English teacher, so that is very grading heavy. So you're spending hours every day or every weekend trying to grade everything that you have. I was a high school teacher. I taught American Lit, and it was the best job I ever had. I absolutely loved my kids. I loved my subject. It was my absolute favorite. But it's getting to the point where it's just miserable to a lot of folks to go to school now, because you feel like people are watching you. You feel like there's a target on your back. And I knew that that would happen to me because of the sort of teacher I was. I knew that I would likely be targeted. And honestly, that's not good for my kids. They would struggle trying to learn in a class when their teacher is, the subject of commotion.
Well, everything you're saying is 100% accurate. And I've got 5 sisters and 1 brother. And I think one of the things that have changed from the time I was a kid to now is my dad raised all of us on a single income,
Mhm.
7 of us. Mom didn't have to work. We'd come home to, good home cooked meals every night. They were there to try to keep us or try to make us do our homework. Um, and it's changed so much that now there's parents that are out there working multiple jobs to earn enough to take care of 2 or 3 children. And I think that's something that's causing a lot of the problems that we have in today's society. But when it comes to the attacks on school teachers, I've been involved in building things all my life, whether it was in construction as an electrician or building vehicles at General Motors as an electrician. Um, Teachers are builders too. You are building the future of this nation through the next kid that may design or cure cancer,
Mhm.
maybe one of your students. So we need to pay more attention and give our students a good foundation to an ability to learn, but pay the teachers enough to hold them. It's just different. Anyway, um, is there anything else on education? Oh, book burnings and banning of books. My goodness.
Aren't those fun?
Oh,
We are seeing a whole lot of legislation. We see a lot of bills in Jeff City and across the nation. I just did a podcast last night from some guys that are from Iowa. So Iowa was the one that was passing the bill trying to put cameras in into classrooms, which is very unsafe. I mean, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And plus, we have kids that are in foster care. We have kids that are in, domestic violence situations that no one needs to know where these children are. So the whole thing, the whole premise is just awful. And it's just another attack on public education. But the book burnings, I mean, we have to call that what it is. That's fascism. And you're never on the right side of history when you're burning a book.
right.
So there was a bill voted out of committee yesterday in Missouri to ban the 1619 project. And when people hear that word, that project, they have an automatic, knee-jerk reaction to it. But what I would say is, like, read it. I promise you, it's poetry and essays. It's not a history curriculum. People say, well, it's not exact history. You're right. It's not, but that's not what it's supposed to be.
Right.
It's literature. And sometimes that's through someone else's eyes that doesn't see history the same way that you do.
But not seeing it the same way doesn't make it wrong or bad.
Right.
And for the people that see it a different way, if they learn to embrace it, they enrich themselves, but they also make us a better society. I'll never understand it. I mean, I never in my life thought that I would see book burnings and Nazi flags, swastikas, Confederate flags being paraded all over.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's on to workers' rights. I'm union. I've been union almost my whole adult life. And what is your position on organized labor, and not just about the unions, but what they bring to the economy in the areas that they're mostly focused?
Well, I can tell you I was not part of a union when I started my teaching career in Arkansas. When I came to Missouri, I worked at Park Hill, which is a unionized district. And after I left Park Hill, that was my first experience with the union, and they have very high wages and very good working conditions. I went to a couple other smaller schools after that, and I realized really quickly the difference. And one, pay, it was just, I took a $20,000 pay cut to go an hour north of Park Hill. And that was because of, what they had decided. They had bargaining rights. They had the ability to talk about their salaries. And the rest of the schools I've been in, we weren't. We were shut out of the process. We just would ask for a raise and we got what we got. And that's the way it was. And if you didn't like it, you could hit the highway. And so I definitely stand behind unionized labor. My great grandpa, whom I'm named after, his name was Jess. He worked in the coal mines in Alex, Arkansas in the 1930s. They were organizing in 39 and 40. So I come from a line of progressive rural folks who know what it takes, to get good wages and fair wages. And that takes us coming together and being able to unionize and bargain.
Right. No, I absolutely agree, obviously. And we need candidates that don't just support labor and give you a vote once in a while. We want the ones that are proud to carry the union banner. Because
And I will say that I was an NEA member at my last school, and I was the only teacher in the entire district that was NEA. So there's in Missouri, National Teaching Organization, which most teachers belong to, called MSTA. They're not a union. And for years, I didn't understand that. I thought I was part of a union because I was paying dues, and I was under the impression they do not bargain for our pay, and they don't, do anything with our working conditions. So when I became a member of NEA, I was like, oh, this is different.
right. Well, welcome to the union. Yeah, we want people that'll probably carry the banner for labor unions and organized labor, because the stronger we are, the stronger the people are that are coming with us. Um, you know, a rising tide floats all boats, and we always hear that, but that's for us union members, but there's people out there that don't even have boats, and they're the people that are struggling and rubbing two pennies together to try to buy bread for their family or bus fare to go to a job that doesn't pay enough for them to feed themselves. So as organized labor goes, so goes the middle class, but also the people that are less fortunate. So I appreciate your position on labor. And in healthcare, I don't know how big, I don't know anything about the geographical footprint of House District 1 up there.
Mhm.
How is the healthcare? Are there hospitals?
There are, and we were lucky to keep one of our biggest ones in Maryville. It was formerly St. Francis, and then they were, in trouble financially, and so they ended up merging with Mosaic. So we were able to keep our hospital, which there's been about 15 or 16 rural hospitals that have closed in the last decade. So we were lucky that we were able to keep that. But I'll tell you, something happens when you merge with a larger corporation. St. Francis had childcare at the facility, at the hospital, and so they had 180 kids that were getting, quality childcare. When Mosaic took over, they got rid of the childcare center, and so there were 180 people that had nowhere to send their kids, and they had 2 weeks notice. And that is a massive problem as well, not just in Northwest Missouri, but across the state, is finding affordable and quality health care or child care for our.
Well, obviously you know what you got up there. How would Medicare affect your part of the state, or Medicaid, if they get rid of that expansion?
Yeah, we could really use Medicaid up here. I'm not exactly sure how many people would be eligible, but I know there's several of my neighbors that would probably be eligible. And I think it's an absolute outrage that they have tried to overturn the will of the voters over and over again when we clear a mandate to expand Medicaid, and they're not listening, and they're trying to do everything they can to not fund Medicaid expansion when it's federal money. It's federal money. And if we're going to talk about that, I forgot to mention something in education. The state of Missouri right now is sitting on $1.9 billion that they will not disperse to our schools. Missouri is the only state in the country that has not dispersed these federal funds to schools. It would be over 300 million per school. Wouldn't be that, because it would be, staggered by, how many people were enrolled. But the fact that we're sitting on 1.9 billion and are going to send it back because we have state representatives and we have state senators in Jeff City fighting each other, nearly getting into fist fights, calling each other names, screaming, wearing overalls on the Senate floor just to cause disruptions instead of doing what they should do. Not you or me or anybody else would have the ability to go to work and not work and scream and threaten our coworkers. But that's what they're doing. And they're paralyzing our state with their non-action.
I agree 100%. And one of the things that I always kind of brings back to this to me is the idea of term limits.
Mhm.
That's what gave us what we've got. That's why we have so much unprofessionalism through in our state assembly. And when you look at Washington, D.C., there's small factions, but as a percentage of the group, it's tiny. But in our house up in Jeff City, a lot of them people are just, they don't care about the people. They don't.
You're right. And I hear a lot of people, because it's this notion that if we had term limits, it would make things better. And that's because we didn't understand the system. That actually gets people to fighting for the next position up because they know they're limited. And they don't have to work for voters if they're limited. And they're just they're being ladder climbers. They're trying to go somewhere else. Look at Josh Hawley, look at Eric Schmidt. All they're doing is using their office to go to the next one. And that's why it's so important to elect people who aren't looking for power. And I can 100% tell you that's me. I have no desire to have power. I have a desire to help people in my community and give them the power so that they have an ability to, make their lives better. Government was meant to make things better. Look at FDR, that's my great grandparents were FDR Democrats because they saw what happened when good government came to town. And they always voted for Democrats after that. And then my parents ended up being conservative, which is wild and crazy. But I have roots in, rural progressives.
Right. So do I. My mom's mom, we called her Granny B. She was very worked very hard in politics out in the Bonne Terre, Missouri area. So I get it.
Yeah.
She was funny. How are you doing on endorsements? Are you getting any endorsements?
I am. I'm so happy to have UAW at their endorsement. That meant just so much to me. I went down to Kansas City and spoke with their folks down there. And I was walking out and I said, well, I hope to hear from you soon. And they're like, no, you've got our endorsement. So I was just like, so happy. And that means so much to me to get it. And I think people, when they think about endorsements, like there's a difference between getting UAW, who are working for Ford, and then getting a Ford endorsement. Like I don't want an endorsement from a corporation. I want the endorsement of people who are, pulling their resources together and trying to get people in office who will actually help them. So
Right.
I have them. And then I have another group called Roadmap for Progress. And they're kind of a large group. They're in blue states. And what they do is try to help red states and red progressives or progressives get elected. So filing is next week, and hopefully once we officially file, we'll have some endorsements that will follow.
Well, you got to get filed and become
Yeah.
official, and then the chips will start falling in for you. That's great. Congratulations. I know as I participated in UAW endorsement process, and that questionnaire is about 25 pages. So it's big. I mean, it's a lot. Anyway, congratulations on your endorsements.
Thank you.
Agriculture plays a big role in our state's economy. And I wanted to get, because you're from rural Missouri,
Uh-huh.
what is your feeling on these corporate farms?
To small farmers, communities. They can be harmful. I'm not going to say that. So I'm going to talk about a CAFO for a minute, and that means a concentrated animal feeding operation. And so these are places where they have, thousands of hogs or thousands of, cows in barns, and they, raise them and then sell them for meat. So in Missouri, in the mid 25,000 family hog farms. Now, today, there are about 2,300. So in the course of a generation, we've lost an entire industry to factory farming. People are experiencing, chain issues. They are having a hard time getting chicken or, pork. And that's because these huge corporations have a hold on every single of agriculture, from the feed to the lot to the meat to the packaging to the processing, everything. And so they've completely cut out, small farmers. And so I'm
Right.
definitely for small farmers, and not even talking about what these places can do to our environment. They have, millions of gallons of waste that they have to disperse. And so oftentimes this can lead to waste leaching into our drinking water. I've been around CAFOs where the people around it couldn't go out in the summertime for a couple of days because the smell will just knock you down. It completely, obliterates your, the price of your home. So I'm not saying all CAFOs are bad neighbors, but rural communities should be able to decide if they want them in or not.
I agree. One of the other things that is of a concern, or should be of a concern, is foreign ownership of American agricultural, land, farms. And I think I read that the Chinese own 40,000 acres or something like that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it totals foreign owned land is about 100,000 acres in Missouri. So it's different companies. I think you're right with China owning about 40,000, but that's a national security risk. If we can't grow our own food, if China is coming over here and using our resources and then shipping their Smithfield pork, if they wanted to ship it all back to China, that's their right. They used our land, polluted our land, and then they're allowed to send it wherever they want. It's a
Right.
national security risk.
I agree 100%. Something else that's a national security risk is the domestic content in our military weaponry.
Yeah.
Microchips, if it's affecting everything that uses a microchip with us on, and I know this is a little bit, not anywhere we're going to discuss this. That scares me, and we'll leave it at that. I don't like the idea of not knowing if we can build our products domestically. So
I totally agree. And I mean, we see it with, like, I needed a new oven. I didn't know that ovens are, 3 months, 6 months out. Everybody knows what's going on with the car market right now. You're exactly right.
yeah, well, I'm glad to see them making investments in the United States to build microchip factories and stuff.
Yes.
So, um, is there anything that you would want to add? I mean, this is your show and you're doing a great job. Is there
Thank
anything?
you. I would just want to add that I think that in Missouri, Democrats have kind of, they're taking on a defensive position. And I don't think that we need to do that. I think that we need to hit the ground running. Everything that is wrong in this state can be placed at the feet of the GOP because they have been a supermajority for almost 2 decades. So there is nothing wrong in this state that has been caused by a Democrat. Everything can be handed back to them. There's no reason for us to not be playing ball. So I think we need to be aggressive. I think we need to be out there. We need to be talking. And when you say that people, find me on TikTok, I think I have an outsized audience. There's a whole lot of people on there following me. And the reason why is because there are not a lot of rural people that are standing up and saying the things that we need to say. I'm not saying anything that every one of my neighbors couldn't. It's just that I'm saying it publicly. We don't need to be embarrassed. We don't need to worry that, people are going to think something of us. It's time for us to stand back and take our state back, take our schools back, and tell these people we believe in democracy, and we believe that we put you there to do a job.
Right. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And as a dirt road Democrat, I like that. That's nice. That's catchy. Um, I'm like I've said before, I'm pretty much raised in rural Missouri, and there's a lot of Democrats out here. But the difference between you, I can put myself in the same category, and quite a few other rural Democrats, is first of all, not being afraid to speak out on the issues, including the controversial ones, but being able to speak out on those controversial issues and not shying away from them. When people see that, they perceive that as a weakness.
And honestly, I mean, I've never backed down from a fight. I don't go looking for a fight, but I'm not going to back down for it if it's
Right,
something that I believe in. And I think that's the approach that Democrats need to take. You know, we all see what's wrong. And you'll see a lot of the Missouri GOP talking about national Democrats. They keep talking, they're trying to gerrymander our state right now. They want
right,
a 7-1 map, which is not even close to the representation that we need. But they'll call it the Pelosi map. Now, why would they do that? Because they know that everything in this state is their fault. So they have to reach out and trying to find an unpopular national Democrat. Push back every time. Push
right,
back. And that's exactly what I do with CRT. When someone says someone's a school's teaching CRT, show me. And we're the show me state, right? Show
right,
me the lesson plan. Show me the graded work. Show me a teacher that is teaching that. And they can't because it's not being taught.
right. Most of the people that are complaining about it can't even spell it. So,
Well,
so
that's an easy one.
right. Well, you would think, but then again, they keep voting Republican, and Republicans just slap them in the face by rejecting the policies they support. So,
And we need to talk about that. We vote for progressive ballot, initiatives. We voted for medical marijuana. We voted against right to work. We vote, to expand Medicaid, and then turn around and vote for a Republican who will take every single one of those things down.
right,
And the way we can tell people that is to connect the politician to his policies.
right,
This very nice Republican that you voted for turned around and did this. He put a CAFO in your backyard. He voted against your will on Medicaid. And that's how we show people. We don't have to be mean. We don't have to be hateful. Just, show them the dots and then connect them.
right. I think in a conversation you and I were having, I brought it up because you're a school teacher. I would like to see our elected officials be graded on the work that they do. And I know there's organizations out there, but post an actual postcard, a report card with the A's, B's, C's, and all that stuff. And think about it. I
Yeah.
mean, what
No, I
legis-
know they're trying to audit teachers, and I just keep saying you're auditing the wrong people. I've seen these people. Have you ever had, like, I'm not going to ask you specifically, but I've never went to work, went to lunch and had a drink and came back to work. Like, these people are putting their feet up on their desk. They're drinking at lunchtime. It's just things that to the rest of us are absolutely outrageous. But
right,
in general, these people aren't working folks. They don't understand what it means to need to get up at a certain time every single day and give it everything you've got. And I think that we need that.
right. Well, after the 2018 election, I ran into a Republican that had just won the election. And we were talking, and I said, congratulations on your election. It was obviously the will of the people for you to represent them in Jefferson City again. He said, yeah, he says, I'm honored. He says, I got a good district. I said, you do. And your district voted against right to work. So I'm sure that you would be willing to honor the will of the people and for your duration in office, oppose right to work. And he was quiet for a minute. And he says, well, I don't think the people fully understand what they voted for because they vote for me and they know what my position is on right to work, that I'll support it. So
That
I
is
think,
so infuriating. And that's what they do. I feel I wrote as soon as the Medicaid, they wouldn't, fund it. I wrote everyone I knew and they just pat you on the head. The gerrymandering though, clean Missouri, us passing it and them, I mean, explicitly saying the voters didn't know what they voted for and
right,
then put it on again with that crazy language that confused everybody. And then they got their way.
right,
But I feel like a lot of times they don't like us. They think that we're stupid and they're working for someone other than us.
right. I agree with you 100%. It boggles my mind because the people will go back out there and you've heard me say it's the 5 Gs: God, guns, gays, greed, and gynecology, which is, I'm using that for abortion.
Yeah.
Um, they will get beat over the head on that every Sunday in church. They walk out of there like robots. Democrats are bad, liberals, commies, whatever it is, unions. and they come out, and that's almost like that's how they get reprogrammed at the end of each week.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I know. I feel you, but it's hard to beat. I think that's what is good about being rural is in general, like I'm a gun owner. I'm not trying to take your guns. I have 5 kids and 3 grandkids. Are you going to call me a baby, a baby killer? No, I just believe that people should make their own health decisions. I thought that you guys out here were against the government getting into your business. Why are we getting into people's business?
right.
And so it's just always just flipping the script because what Republicans say is not what they mean. We do mean it.
Yeah, well, they actually mean it until it's going to have an adverse effect on them. Then all of a sudden they don't mean it. So
Yeah.
Charles West is watching. He made a very good point. I'll see if I can scroll it in here again. Sorry. I don't know what I'm doing on that phone. I don't see it now. Sorry. But anyway, we've had a few people stop in and view the live. There was some commentary, but I can't do that and talk to you. I don't want to be distract you. Anyway, it's been a great conversation. You're a good candidate. You're running a campaign. I've worked on congressional races where the candidate was not as good as what you're doing.
Thank you.
So you got a tremendous future in politics in Missouri, and I hope that one of these days after you finish your terms, you climb that ladder.
Well, thank you, Glenn. I really appreciate it. Can I tell people where they can find me?
Absolutely. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
So my website is jessicapiperformissouri.com. You can find me on Twitter at Piper for Missouri, Facebook, Piper for Missouri, and then my favorite app in the world, TikTok, at Just Piper Mo.
Right. And I'll be recording this and I'll be putting it in on a YouTube channel. I'll share it with you and you can do with it what we'll put it wherever you want. Anyway, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to come to Labor Talk and Table Talk. And I'll be catching up to you. Are you
I
going
appreciate
you still want to do the live?
Absolutely.
All right, that's what we'll do. Great conversation. You did wonderful. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to be with us here at Table Talk.
Thank you, Glenn.
Bye-bye.
Bye.